Hello everybody, welcome to StraightA. Dawson here, back in another episode of Madden Fantasy Football, or Madden 24 Fantasy Football. Very excited to get underway with this. Very good series, really fun series. A lot of work, but I love it all the same. We're going into week 3, week 4, and week 5 this week to see how all these matchups line up. And before we get started, I do want to apologize. I forgot to actually include a clip from the previous video of basically me showing the matchups beforehand, so it may look like I didn't really show the matchups and just showed the results randomly. So that's an error on my part. Won't happen again, or at least hopefully won't happen again. But either way, guys, let's get right into the video. Week 3 is now here, and we have definitely some progression that we have made in the last 2 weeks, and a lot of different information we found of each of these teams and how well their players can do in Madden. So, kind of going into the matchups, this is the last week of our divisional matchups right now. We have Mixing Up taking on Kittle Big Town, with Mixing Up obviously having an advantage here by every stretch of the imagination, except 0-2 are the records for both these teams. So, one of these teams is going to pick up their first win today. We'll see who it ends up being. Next up in the same divisional matchup with the 2-0 teams from this division, so somebody is bound to lose their first matchup here, but both teams are actually decently matched up together. Of course, picket lines behind by about 20 points in total points for. Bryce is Right has been on a rampage, if I don't say so myself, but we'll see it. They're both 2-0, so anything can happen. Both their teams are decently stacked, so we'll see how the matchups actually end up going. Then you got How I Met Calf Your Mother going to Hooked on a Thielen. Ignore the 10th and 1st. I forgot to delete those. But this is an interesting matchup as well, because Hooked on a Thielen had a really, really great week last week, extraordinary, but also had a really crappy week the week before. So I'm going to be curious to see where their team actually ends up landing on a consistent basis, while How I Met Calf Your Mother has just kind of struggled to be on the kind of mid-pack. They're facing off against some hard opponents here, and they end up losing when these teams actually have some big moments here. So How I Met Calf Your Mother needs to gain some momentum pretty soon to pick up their first win, but we'll see. They haven't been doing horrible, but they definitely need to pick it up a little bit. Then, of course, Crispy Kareems are facing off against Smile for the Kamara. Very evenly matched up team here. Of course, 10 points difference for the points for, as well as the similar placement at this point. But 2-0 is for Smile for the Kamara, is the record for Smile for Kamara, I should say. While Crispy Kareem is 1-1, so decently even. We'll see who's going to pick up the win in this one as well. Moving on to Baskin Dobbins versus Nakua Matata. The first place points for versus the 11th place points for, but Baskin Dobbins had an unfortunate matchup last week against Hooked on a Thielen, where they actually ended up getting upset. No, wait, I think it was Addison Square Garden, my bad, not Hooked on a Thielen. Where they ended up just barely squeaking by with a loss. So we'll see what happens here on Baskin Dobbins. They've definitely been one of the better performing teams, obviously with first in points for right now. But Nakua Matata has been kind of drifting towards the bottom of the barrel right now. So we'll see if Nakua Matata can turn the tide here against Baskin Dobbins. Meanwhile, Ominous versus Addison Square Garden, the two teams that just got their first win, of course, both 1-1 now. Similar points for, of course, with Addison Square Garden have the advantage here. But breakdown's also similar, records similar, and last week they both picked up a win. So either way could go for both these teams. As well, I want to showcase the standings here. This is a new page. I'm just going to showcase the standings as time goes on. Top to bottom, first to last, basically. It goes by record, and then it goes by points for. So this is the current standings of each of the divisions so far, and I'll break it down every time. And this is the current eliminator matchup left, so 10 players are still left in this matchup. And if you're curious, I'm just going to go ahead and showcase the standings from week 1. Oh, probably shouldn't have gone back that far. So that was the standings from week 1 in case you were curious. That way I can keep a running tally of it all going on. But let's see how these players actually end up doing here this week. Week 3 is now in the books with all the results now already pending. Of course, we're going to show you some of the injuries, notable injuries. I don't remember if I showed you Raheem Mostert last time, but he's out for a few weeks here for the Miami Dolphins, so I can never, learn how to do the alphabet here. Yeah, he's out for another 8 weeks. I don't know if I showed that last time, as well as the only other notable person that's out for multiple weeks, Tank Dell, for the next few weeks. There's a couple people for week 4 that's going to be a little rough around the edges, if I can remember on top of my head where they are. But Commanders are really struggling there. Antonio Gibson, as we spoke before, Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin. A lot of them are going to be out for a week, but that's just kind of minor little inconveniences for any person with a their 20-person roster. So, that's how it goes. Otherwise, there's nothing big news from what it seems like, just kind of notable things of like, oh, this person might be traded. Oh, this person kind of did good. This blowout happened. So nothing really too much in news, all that much. Transactions, there's like no new transactions to be noted here. But here is the quick standings, of course, on screen. as well as the schedule for last week, just show you the results. That way you can kind of do your checks and balances of how well I did things. I'm still just simulating through because that's just the most efficient way for me to get this done quicker and quicker, because it's not meant to be a big project scheme, but we'll see how it goes as time goes on, of course. Then we have, of course, we're going to go over the stats of this week. Well, not just this week, but in general. Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen, as you'll see, are very dominant in this category. Meanwhile, if you look at the entire NFL, if I ever can click my left trigger there. NFL, here's the current stat leaders right now, with Patrick Mahomes leading the yardage. Touchdowns to interception ratios are pretty damn good right now for most of the top guys here. Rushing, Derrick Henry continues to be the best, but Ramondre Stevenson, Aaron Jones, not too bad behind them. Receiving wise, CeeDee Lamb fell a little bit, but Stephon Diggs is taking advantage, while Chris Godwin continues to find the end zone week after week. Nico Collins, Traylon Burks, also some notable names up here near the top. So that's kind of the quick and easy of this week so far, but let's get into exactly how the results turned out, because a lot of them pretty interesting. Week 3 is here, and I'm going to show you all the Excel points and all that at the end of the video for weeks 3, 4, and 5. That way y'all can just get a good quick recap and see it on Excel and be done with it. But I'll just give you the nice and skinny right here. The nice and skinny. Let's not copy that one. Either way, though, we're going to week 3. Here are the results from everything, mixing up in Kittle Big Town. Two of the bottom of the barrel teams, as evidence here, their weeks were not very good to both of them. But Kittle Big Town did come on top there, while mixing it up just had an atrocious week. As you see, Kenny Pickett, Pat Freiermuth, and Jared Goff, all of them just nobody performed very well there. So now mixing it up isn't 0-3 team and near the bottom of the points for. But Kittle Big Town has had favorable matchups to finally get a win because they are last in points for right now by a considerable margin. But they did have Justin Herbert do pretty well, which helps them get over the top. But it was, even then, it was 20+ point difference here in this matchup. The breakdowns for both these teams are also pretty bad. Going into the next up, Picket Line versus the Bryce is Right. The Bryce is Right has its first loss, as this was a battle of the undefeated. Picket Line is now entering 3-0 here in the whole NFL Madden whole deal. But both of these teams are some of the top teams in the whole league, because points for they are topping the league near the top, and the breakdowns are pretty favorable for both of them. And just at the end of the day, Picket Line had Josh Allen, Devon Achane, Travis Kelce, and Joe Mixon all performed 20+ points. Not to mention a lot of other players doing 15, 16, 17, 18. Having 175.5 points in a week is absolutely just insane. While the Bryce is Right had a pretty decent week, being third in points for, but when you go up against the first in points for, it does suck. But Kyle Pitts and Kenneth Walker did pretty good, especially Kyle Pitts. He had 4 touchdowns his game, but then the only notable person who didn't really do well was Amon-Ra. So take that as you will. Bryce is Right, unfortunately, we're taking one loss, but still a long season ahead here to go, and we still have a great team to look forward to. Then we get the How I Met Your Mother falling to 0-3, while Hooked on a Thielen is getting a 2-1. This week they didn't do too well in terms of points for, 9th in points for, but again they have a favorable matchup, keeping them in the running for a favorable record in the end. As you see, both their teams didn't have too many players do really well, and they only had really one notable person do it kind of well. Even with How I Met Your Mother, they've struggled. They've struggled all season so far, so we'll see how they continue to maybe rise through it. Through the season. They've never been like one of the lowest scoring teams, but they've always been in that 10th, 11th spot. So we'll see how that kind of goes for them. The breakdowns, of course, are on screen. Then you see there's a notable missing here for Smile for the Kamara. They are missing any players because all their players either just kind of did as expected, I guess. Nobody really outshined or did really bad, but they ended up losing because Krispy Kreme's edges it out by 4 points to just beat them out. Again, very similarly placed teams here, both points for total and points for now. Both of them are now 2-1, but Traylon Burks and Stephon Diggs had very good week, while Calvin Ridley was the only disappointment from this whole matchup. So kind of middle of the pack teams, but we'll see how they do throughout the season. Baskin Dobbins facing off against Nakua Matata. Baskin Dobbins was going into this matchup thinking it was going to be pretty easy, but Nakua Matata, after a atrocious week last week, rose to the rankings again to do a little bit better. The 4th points for versus the 2nd points for, very good matchup. It still was a 15-point difference, but both of them shined pretty well. Both their quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, did very similar to each other and had a very good running back, while just Nakua Matata didn't have the depth for to take on Baskin Dobbins this week. So as you see, the points for in total at the very top here, 1st and 8th total is pretty unfortunate, but Baskin Dobbins doesn't hold a big lead for the points for in total, but the breakdown 29-4, pretty favorable for him. Nakua Matata still has lost long season at 1-2, so we'll see how they go. going forward. Ominous or whatever versus Addison Square Garden. Again, a very, very good, similarly matched up team. They're more in the upper ranges of good teams here. Jalen Hurts and Devonta Smith had a great connection in this week, while TJ Hawkinson unfortunately just could not pull its weight. But Ominous still beat Addison Square Garden. Addison Square Garden just having some unfortunate matchups here so far because they had actually nobody perform really bad. Odell Beckham and Derrick Henry actually performed really, really good. Just unfortunate right now they're starting at 1-2, but again, still a long season ahead. Divisional games are now over. So now we're into the standings right now. Picket line, Bryce is right, Kittle, Big Town, and mixing it up all in that order. Of course, it's all on screen. I shouldn't just read them like that. But as you see, some pretty big fiends here from Baskin Dobbins, Bryce is right, and Picket line, all in the 400-plus club. But we only have one undefeated team left, and that's Picket line, so that's pretty cool. While we have two teams that have only been defeated, How I Met Calf and Mixing It Up. So we'll see how those two teams kind of play out their season. Points for, again, lowest being 291.3 points, it looks like. So pretty considerable difference between first and last in points for. We'll see how that kind of extends or diminishes as time goes on. But this is current standing so far. We'll kind of update those as time goes on. Mixing It Up, of course, was the unfortunate team eliminated from the eliminator this week. That means we have 9 teams left in the eliminator. We'll see who gets eliminated. 2 more teams will be eliminated this video. And moving forward, we're now going into week 4, into our current matchups of Mixing It Up and Nakua Matata. So, of course, right now, Nakua Matata and Mixing It Up both lost last week. Both have a little bit of momentum loss. Both of them are more on the lower side of points for. Breakdown for Mixing It Up. Mixing It Up still looking for their first win. Could be against Nakua Matata, who's had a good week, bad week, in between. We'll see, but Mixing It Up has just not had a whole lot of momentum for them, so we'll see if their team can pull it together. Meanwhile, How I Met Calf, Your Mother, again, still looking for their first win, facing off against one of the better teams. My team, of course, the Bryce is Right. We'll see how they kind of pull things together and go against each other this week, but Bryce is Right has a favorable matchup here, being the 25-8 breakdown, being very favorable for them. Baskin Dobbins versus Krispy Kreme's, the battle of the sweets here this week. Baskin Dobbins and Krispy Kreme's had a very good first week compared to each other. I think they were first and second, so now they'll be kind of a rematch from that first week, not rematch, but like a showcase of those two teams, I should say. But Baskin Dobbins still a clear favorite in this league so far, but being 2-1 is a little unfortunate for them. But both teams are 2-1, so we'll see how they both perform. Could be a little bit interesting to see how this could play out. Ominous versus Hooked on a Thielen. Both of them have a win going into this. Both of them are 2-1. Both of them are very similarly matched up. This is going to be the game of the week to be looking out for, because Hooked on a Thielen has shown that they can be explosive, but can they beat Ominous, who's just been consistently good? So we'll have to see how that all plays out. Kittle Big Town, while they have the lowest breakdown and lowest points for, they still have a win, which is better than 2 other teams in this whole league. They're facing off against Addison Square Garden, who isn't doing too much better, but points for, they've actually favored up pretty well, but just in terms of their 1 and 2 as well, it's kind of unfortunate. So Kittle Big Town, can they do the upset? We'll see. Addison Square Garden looking to kind of go even now this week. And then finally, I think this is final, but yeah. See, I can count in my head. Picket line, again, one of the only undefeated team is facing off against Smile for the Kamara, who is kind of one of those sneaky teams. You don't know, they could maybe do pretty well if Picket line has a bad week and just kind of average. Small for the Kamara could come out of nowhere, get that 120 points ish, and kind of be able to capitalize that week. So Picket line needs to watch out here, and Small for the Kamara is looking to maybe raise their stock a little bit, while Picket line's looking to stay as the clear favorite in this league so far. So how about we get right into the league and see how the actual week 4 went? Of course, now week 4 is in the books officially. Actually, not too much news in terms of this game or in terms of this week. Too much to be available. No injuries happened. No free agent signings. Nothing too really notable. On the side here, all the little news for the current casters here. If you want to pause and read all of those or any good stuff like that. Here's the current next league standings. Week 5 matchups too, if you're interested in that. But just kind of the current win-loss ratios for most of the teams. There's 4 teams missing because there are bye weeks starting in week 5. But we'll cover those in a little bit here. In terms of schedule for week 4, give you the total matchup scores. That's not team schedules. Don't want team schedules. Want league schedules. That way I can kind of show you all the kind of results from all of these games and just show you roughly what the scores were and kind of get an idea of where the defenses and all that kind of landed and all this stuff. So, take it as you will as time goes on. There's not really much note in terms of the awards this week, actually, because Ryan Tannehill and Baker Mayfield, both undrafted quarterbacks, won the awards this week, so we don't have to go over those. We can just go over the current standings of the current NFL record people. Patrick Mahomes still doing good, Josh Allen doing good, Dak Prescott doing good. After that, kind of a drop-off. Aaron Rodgers has been doing pretty okay, but other than that, Justin Herbert kind of has done all right, too. Rushing, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, and Aaron Jones, main guys there, but Travis Etienne, Ramondre Stevenson, Joe Mixon, also making a little bit of name for themselves. Joe Mixon actually had a pretty damn good week with end zone or touchdowns, I guess, in general. Stephon Diggs, Mike Evans. Mike Evans has been super efficient with his catches, by the way. 21 receiving receptions for 353 yards for 16.8 on average, which is pretty nice. CeeDee Lamb hasn't really done as well since the first week, but he's trying. Cooper Kupp, Nico Collins, all that good stuff, keeping up here. Chris Godwin, but also Travis Kelce as a tight end here up this far is actually pretty nice for their positional value. So take that as you will. That's kind of all the stats and everything kind of noteworthy. Like I said, this week there was no injuries. There's no free agents to really kind of note of. By the way, again, I'm going to reiterate, if they drafted a person who ended up going to free agency or just ended up being cut and just not ended up being used, that's all on them. It's just how the cookie crumbles. It's just the heart of the cards. You got to draft players who you know are good in Madden, but that's the AI, so go figure. Now we're going to go into the Week 4 results and kind of show you how the matchups actually ended up playing out. Of course, Week 4 comes with some results and some implications this week because Mixing Up and Nakua Matata faced off this week. So two of the worst teams in the league currently, both record-wise and points-for-wise, ended up squaring off. Mixing It Up going in with 0 wins in this matchup, but they finally picked up their first win against Nakua Matata, who just really can't get anything really rolling ever since that one really good week. Kind of just struggling here. But the worst points for versus the 10th points for now in really bad breakdown records. Mixing It Up had some Cooper Kupp and Juju action here, while Kenny Pickett and Jared Goff, both their quarterbacks, just did not do any magic here. But they were able to make it out with the ninth best points for this week at 113.7. They still narrowly beat the worst points for. I shouldn't say narrowly because that's about almost 20 points. So yeah, take that as you will. Actually, it is over 20 points. So the worst points for Nakua Matata, so pretty favorable matchup there. Nakua Matata didn't have any, had a lot of players do pretty bad. George Kittle, David Montgomery, J.K. Dobbins, with Lamar Jackson being the only person kind of picking up some of their weight, if not anything else. So Nakua Matata still needs to get things rolling, while Mixing It Up is hoping to get this momentum rolling for multiple more weeks, but both their points for does not spell a good story for them in the future. How I Metcalf Your Mother versus The Price is Right. The Price is Right, the best scorer this week, and going up to 3-1. Brandon Ayuk, Nico Collins, and Kenneth Walker doing really well, while Sam Laporta and Kyler Murray just did not have a great week. Sam Laporta has yet to do really well, while Kyler Murray just stunk to 0.3 points, ton of picks this week, so unfortunate. But The Price is Right has taken over the official top spot for the points for leader right now, so 574. Pretty nice so far, while the breakdown's also very favorable. How I Metcalf Your Mother, though, kind of on the lower end of points for, but they're not dead last. They're actually not even the bottom 4 in terms of points for, but they are 0-4 because of this really unfortunate matchups. Their division's pretty strong, and The Price is Right is a tough opponent to have in Week 4. They had 2 stellar players, not actually 139.8 points. They were the 4th best scorer this week. Not too shabby for them. They just have unfortunate matchups where they're just facing teams that are a little bit better than that week, or a lot better than that week. But this week was actually pretty favorable. Maybe they can get something rolling, but they got to pick up the pieces soon because 0-4 is not a good start. There's only 14 games in the regular season. That means there's 10 more games. I mean, the best record you can have now is 10-4, which is still good, but that's 10 wins in a row. That's hard to do. But Jarrett McKinnon and Darnell Mooney did pick up a lot of slack, while everybody else just did kind of average. No one really did, worse than expected, or way worse than expected at least. So we'll see how they kind of end up going. While we have Baskin Dobbins taking on Krispy Kreme's, and Baskin Dobbins has been pretty good at the top of the charts for most of the time, while Krispy Kreme's has kind of fell off the charts a little bit. Both underwhelming both underwhelming weeks for both these teams, honestly. Baskin Dobbins is used to about 135 points, 0.6 on average, but they did pick up the win with 116, the 8th best in points for this week. Aaron Rodgers and Jalen Warren doing pretty well. Chris Godwin and Tank Dell doing not very well. Tank Dell is injured, so I forgot about that, but I included him anyway, so go figure. Krispy Kreme's Brock Purdy and Darren Waller, Brock Purdy did pretty alright, and then Darren Waller did pretty bad, but everybody else kind of fit in between, or just weren't notable names to put on this list. They're 9th best points for, but they're 2-2, so they've had some favorable matchups, keeping them in the running for some of their standings right now. While Baskin Dobbins 3-1, pretty nice standings here for themselves. Going to Ominous versus Hooked on a Thielen. Actually, Ominous just dominated this week. They did pretty good, 160 points. Jalen Hurts, Jamar Chase, Gus Edwards all putting up 20-plus points, while Isaiah Pacheco put up 0. And I don't think he's injured because I didn't see him on the injury reserve. So, really unfortunate for him this week. Either way, they're up at the 3-1 with the 4th best points for. Kind of a sneaky team, actually. They've been low-key doing really, really well, last couple weeks, but just haven't really like splashed until this week. So pretty cool. Hooked on the Thielen's actually had some similar success. 5th best points for, the 7th best this week, with Nick Chubb, Devontae Adams, and Kenneth Walker doing really well, and Michael Pittman, Jake Ferguson not really able to pick up the slack there, and a couple other players really just ended up in the 6-point area. So hooked on the Thielen just had an unfortunate matchup this week. A lot of other teams they would have beaten, but just not Ominous this week. So both hooked on the Thielen still at 2-2, and Ominous at 3-1. Both still in an alright position. We'll see how they end up. Both their points for have favorable outcomes for them in the future. Well, Kittle Big Town tried to square off against Addison Square Garden in an upset victory. Kittle Big Town getting their second win, so now they're 2-2. Despite being 11th in points for, as we saw before, we have an 8th place team in points for at 0-4 due to matchups. Well, Kittle Big Town has had some favorable matchups, keeping them at 2-2 despite being 11th place in points for. So pretty cool. They actually had a pretty good week this week with 5th in points for the week. Still not enough to really put them over the edge to, a 10th or 9th points for, but still, Justin Herbert, Najee Harris, Allen Lazard, Mike Williams, all having stupendous weeks. Well, David Njoku and the tight end position in general is not doing too well for them, but they actually raise up the ranks a little bit and maybe gain some momentum to maybe climb up the ranks slowly but surely. Addison Square Garden did have a pretty low week, so it was kind of advantageous for Kittle Big Town to win this week. Michael Gallup was the only player that really did all right for Addison Square Garden, while James Conner and Dawson Knox were especially stinkers. So Addison Square Garden falls to 1-3, and Kittle Big Town's 2-2. Again, despite the 5-place difference in points for, Kittle Big Town just found the way to win it big. Then we got Picket Line, the big juggernaut this week, because he was going in this undefeated. He stays undefeated against a pretty strong, decent opponent. 6th place in points for this week, 7th in total points for. No slouch here. Smile for the Kamara. Picked up and try to do as best they can. Didn't have any big slackers, just Justin Fields, Travis Etienne, and Austin Eckler doing pretty good. So now they're 7th in points for, 2-2 on the record. While Picket Line keeps their undefeated streak at 2nd in total points for, barely behind the Bryce's Right. While Mike Evans, Josh Allen, Drake London did really well. While James Cook and Deshaun Watson just fell flat on their face. So pretty good for Picket Line to pick up everything going forward. Here are the current standings for each of the divisions so far. So Extra Point Pirates still, even though the Bryce's Right has more points for, again, it goes by record first, then points for. If for some reason it goes to points for, then we'll see their division records or something like that. I'll figure out some other third tiebreaker that's advantageous for me if I'm the one in that standing. No, I'm kidding. I'll figure out some other one, but mostly the record and then points for rather than divisional wins, stuff like that. I just feel like points for is more fair. Then you got Kittle Big Town, and then mixing it up, and then hooked on a Thielen. Field Goal Fiends is actually really close between the top 3, and then How I Met Calf Your Mother's trying. Their best, but it's actually pretty close for Field Goal Fiends, and Safety Sally's actually has a pretty big competition for the top spot right now. Addison Square Garden, Nakua Matata needs to figure out some things soon here though. Now this week we do have to eliminate the lowest scoring team from the current eliminator, and Krispy Kreme's was the lowest scoring team this week that was still in the eliminator. Let me clarify that every team without an X is in the eliminator. Everybody that's with an X are eliminated. So it's only the teams that are being counted that are not with an X. So just take that into account here. So we still have 8 teams landing here in the eliminator. But guys, I think it's time for week 5. With week 5 comes new matchups, so we have to kind of go through these this week and show you who the matchups are this week. Ominous versus Krispy Kreme's. Pretty, again, one-sided. Ominous has a distinct advantage, of course, on a win streak right now and having the significantly better points for. Krispy Kreme's is trying to get back in the matchups, hopefully maybe picking up an upset victory against Ominous here. So we'll see how this matchup actually ends up going. Picket Line versus Addison Square Garden here. Picket Line's looking to keep on extending their 5-0 lead. Addison Square Garden struggling and hopefully trying to pick themselves back up to get into the divisional the rankings a little bit. But 2nd best points for versus 6th best points for doesn't mean that Addison Square Garden is a slouch. So we'll see, because the point differential it's just a little under 100, but you never know. Everybody could have a bad week. Everybody could have a good week. So Picket Line still trying to hold strong for that undefeated streak. While the Bryce's Right's facing off against a greater competitor in Hooked on the Thielen. They've had some up and down weeks with some good competitors, bad matchups, stuff like that. Hooked on the Thielen's currently 5th in points for, showing that they have some good grinding here. The Bryce's Right's going to try to pick up their 4th victory, while Hooked on the Thielen's looking for their 3rd. How I Met Calf Your Mother and mixing it up. Both teams have struggled this week actually mixing it up. Before this week was also only with defeats, no wins so far. So it's going to be kind of a battle of the lower tiered teams right now. Hopefully one of them is going to get their momentum going forward. How I Met Calf Your Mother really needs it going, while mixing it up is just hoping to maybe kick a team into the dirt while picking themselves up a little bit more into the rankings. While Baskin-Dobbins, top team here, facing one of the lowest tier teams in Kittle Big Town. Kittle Big Town has had some favorable matchups here, while Baskin-Dobbins, they might have a bad week this week, so could give Kittle Big Town a bit of advantage here. But right now, points for is significantly in favor of Baskin-Dobbins, who's had some pretty good weeks, except for last week, I believe. But they still ended up picking up the victory. Kittle Big Town would have beaten Baskin-Dobbins last week, so maybe they'll do it this week and kind of help climb their record even better. Then you got Smile for the Kamara versus Nakua Matata. Very similarly ranked teams. Nakua Matata has been struggling pretty much, but Smile for the Kamara hasn't been the best either. So one of these teams is hopefully going to kind of pick up themselves a little bit and maybe rise up the rankings. Both these teams kind of need it. Again, the current standings here are still the same, and the Eliminator is still the same as well. But now we're actually going to talk about the bye week. So the week 5 now features the first bye weeks, and we have a little bit to explain. So we're going to meet you at the Excel sheet. So as you can see on screen right now, you got all of the teams that have byes. These are just the teams that are what's it called? So as you So as you see on screen, here are a list of all the rosters, of course, with all the names that are on bye week this week. We'll have a bye. Of course, I think I misspoke earlier. If I mentioned it earlier, I've done a lot of takes for this, so I don't remember. I said Rams are on bye week. It's the Seahawks that are on bye week. Seahawks, Chargers, Browns, and some other teams. Seahawks, Browns. So as you see on screen, you got the whole roster list of all these different matchups, and then right by each of the names, like by Tyler Lockett here, for example, it says bye. That means they're on a bye week. I think I've got most of the players for each of these teams, but I may have missed a couple backups. If so, it's not the biggest deal in the world. It's okay. We'll live. Either way, though, there's 4 teams. I think I misspoke earlier. I've done a couple takes of this, so I don't know which ones I'm keeping. I think I said Rams earlier, so instead it's the Seahawks that have a bye week. So it's Seahawks, Browns, Bucks, and Chargers that are gone this week. So some of the teams will be affected. We're going to quickly go over that. Tyler Lockett's the only loss for Amina, so they should be all right in overall. Jackson Smith and the Jigba is mostly just kind of pity points here and there if they do really bad, so Krispy Kreme should be all right too. DK and Quentin Johnson themselves both kind of do a little bit of a blow, but they got Odell Beckham, Mingo, Gallup, and Jaden Reed. Surely at least 2 of those guys can kind of pick it up a little bit. So it's a small loss, but not like a biggest loss. Then for picket line, Mike Evans, Jason Myers, Deshaun Watson, Gerald Everett. Meaning Gerald Everett, now we're relying just on Travis Kelce for the tight end position. We're just relying on Josh Allen for the quarterback position. And Mike Evans is a good receiver, but there's still a lot of depth. There's 5 receivers that could pick it up. And then you got Jason Myers. Now we're relying just on Chris Paul as well. So it's unfortunate they're relying on just one position, but eventually you'll have to do that anyway. So they've actually done pretty well with their roster because Deshaun Watson's out. They got Josh Allen. That's actually normal. Jason Myers with Chris Boswell, they can go either way. Gerald Everett, Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is usually the better one anyway. So this week's less of an impactful one. So getting Mike Evans out of the way too against Madison Square Garden, which will have a decent struggle here with the wide receiver position, could be a favorable position for picket line here. Then we got hooked on a Thielen that's losing Chubb and Amari Cooper and Kareem Hunt. So all the Browns players here. Overall, they should still be all right, except for the running back position. So if you really look, they really only have Raheem Mostert, who's actually injured, Kenneth Gainwell, and Dalvin Cook, and Rashad Penny. So their only starters are Rashad Penny and Kenneth Gainwell. And even then, they're not starters in the game. So they're going to struggle at the running back position because Dalvin Cook's not signed. So they're going to struggle a lot this week. But they still got some really big wide receiver names available. So hopefully the flex position can be easily filled. So it's going to be interesting to see how they land. The Price is Right, though, is losing Kenneth Walker and Cameron Dicker. So still good, a lot of good running back positions, Saquon and Breece Hall, and Elijah Mitchell and Devin Singletary, which Elijah Mitchell is now a starter thanks to CMC going out. So that's going to really help the Price is Right this week. Meanwhile, Cameron Dicker, that means we're just relying on Brandon Aubrey this week. So overall, able to get the players out and rest them up and go on bye week and then, still be pretty healthy overall. How I Metcalf Your Mother, Rashad White, Geno Smith, and the Chargers. That means they're relying on Dak Prescott. They're relying on the Dolphins defense, which, either way, those aren't the 2 biggest changes. Meanwhile, Rashad White hurts a little bit, but also Jarrett McKinnon and Zamir White have shown they can both pop off. And Zach Moss, he's shown to have some points at least too. So it could work out for How I Metcalf Your Mother. Mixing it up, they're relying on the Giants defense this week, which has been really bad, and Elijah Moore this week. so they still have plenty of wide receiver depth, so not too bad there. Kittle Big Town's going to struggle a little bit, though, because they're losing Justin Herbert, so they're relying just on Derek Carr, who has not done the best either. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, which are two big receivers, so they're relying more on Allen Lazard, Sky Moore, and Van Jefferson, which Van Jefferson has not got any reps, and neither has Sky Moore, so good luck there. And then David Njoku's out, so they're relying on Tyler Higbee this week. So that could work out, but it's gonna be a uphill battle a little bit for Kittle Big Town. Meanwhile, Baskin-Dobbins is only losing Chris Godwin, which is, you know, like one receiver you can kind of funnel in and out, because usually some of the backup receivers can at least pop off a little bit. And finally, small for the Kamara has Austin Eckler, Seahawks defense, Zach Charbonnet, and Jerome Ford out. Lots of running backs, if you really look at it. Brian Robinson, Tony Pollard, only running backs, and Travis Etienne. So they have a little bit of depth, so it's not the worst thing in the world, but it could be a little bit better for sure. But I mean, Jerome Ford and Zach Charbonnet haven't been doing that much anyway. Jets defense, they're hit or miss, so Seahawks will see how they actually end up landing here. Or sorry, the Jets will see how they end up landing here versus not having the Seahawks as an advantage there. And Joshua Kelly, Ford, Nakua Matata are the only one gone here, so they are pretty much at full capacity. So interesting lineups here. So we'll see the big implications how it turns out here. But let's see how Week 5 actually turned out in Madden. First bye week of the NFL franchise season is now done in a way, so we're going to see how this kind of has affected teams as the time has gone on. Actually, again, not big news anywhere for like signings or injuries or long-term injuries at least. Here's kind of the news on the right side there for you to read if you want to go through any of them and kind of say, oh, wow, that's kind of cool if you want to be invested in a league like I am, you know, that type of deal. We're going to look at the stats and awards real quick, and I have not looked at in-season awards this week. So Alvin Kamara, no surprise there. He had a monster of a game, and Lamar Jackson has continued to impress as the coming weeks have come. So those two are very valuable players so far for their respective franchise teams. But right now, we'll kind of look at the stats right now for all the teams as they're standing. Josh Allen did rocking himself quite a bit forward, while Dak Prescott did throw 2 picks, but he still kind of made his yardage play a little bit more. And Patrick Mahomes did drop off the board a little bit, while Russell Wilson is kind of just throwing a lot of yards. I'll give him that. And that's about it there. Derrick Henry still continues to charge there. Aaron Jones has gained up momentum, and Joe Mixon has done really well. Travis Etienne has also done very, very well, including in the receiving game, I believe, as well. CeeDee Lamb had another monster of a game, so he did really, really well. Stephon Diggs up there still. Cooper Kupp doing awesome, and Olave doing really well. So Travis Kelce's also increased his stock a little bit in the receiving game, again, being a very valuable positional advantage for those that have Travis Kelce there. Other than that, we'll look at the schedule and show you how Week 5 ended up turning out for you in terms of the actual NFL games. That way you guys kind of get a general idea of how the games ended up turning out for the teams. And of course, remember 4 teams were out on a bye week this week. Of course, I didn't play any of them personally, so there you go. There's all the results of these games, as well as if you want to just quickly see a standings for everybody. I'll probably show up in the next video too, but there's the standings on the side there, minus 2 teams who are on bye, which I have not checked yet. I see some 5-0 teams, Bengals and Eagles, which I wish that happened this year, to be honest with you, but no teams that are just no wins, except for Patriots. I see the Patriots have no wins. Colts and Lions actually have no wins either. Wow, that sucks. Well, dang, guys. Either way, though, some juicy results up ahead. Here we are into the Week 5 results. Some interesting things to kind of talk about here, as well as kind of the bye weeks and how they kind of actually affected the players. I actually got to pull up right here to make sure I have it on hand, ready to go. First of all, we had Ominous losing to Krispy Kreme. So this is actually a little bit more of a shocker because Ominous has been doing pretty well, but Krispy Kreme has been on the up and up a little bit. So now they're up to 3-2. Ominous down to 3-2. And really, they didn't have too many players that were too notable besides DeAndre Hopkins and T.J. Hawkinson that did bad. It's just that they just didn't have anybody spectacular. No bye weeks were really big in effect in this game, so I'm not really going to kind of give any excuses for either team, but they're similarly matched up. Ominous still has the points advantage, but the breakdown for Krispy Kreme actually isn't too far behind, and they've have some impressive players. As you see, Trevor Lawrence, Stephon Diggs, and CeeDee Lamb did pretty good for them this week, so it's just kind of a week-to-week thing how Krispy Kreme is actually going to play out here. Move on to the next game. We have Pickett Line, who, of course, is our undefeated person so far. He stays undefeated against Addison Square Garden in a marginally close matchup. 15 points is not that close. Like I said before, Pickett Line didn't really have too much of an effect in terms of the bye week. The Addison Square Garden did have a little bit of a turmoil with the wide receiver position, but they still didn't falter too much. I don't think that really ended up losing them the game. But yeah, Pickett Line, 4th best points for this week. Addison Square Garden, not too shabby at 6, but Addison Square Garden has just had some bad matchups. They're 7th in points for, and they're 1-4. Crazy to think about here. Pickett Line, they're only 2nd in points for, but they're 5-0. Good matchups there. But as you see on screen, all the players did pretty well for the most part. Even I kind of reached for Pickett Line's players. I guess in bye weeks, it's kind of a little bit easier or a little bit harder to find bad players. But yeah, this is the current matchup with them. Then we have the Bryce is Right versus Hooked on a Thielen. The Bryce is Right goes up to 4-1 still. We're doing really, really awesome. We're first in points for. Our team is going off. Cortland Sutton, Kyler Murray, and Kyle Pitts all did amazing this week. Nico Collins' only disappointment this week. And we really didn't have anything too much of affecting this game either in terms of bye weeks. I lied. Hooked on a Thielen with the running back position actually struggled a whole lot because they had to rely on Kenneth Gainwell and Rashad Penny purely, I believe. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Kenneth Gainwell and Rashad Penny purely in this one. And so that's very unfortunate for them. And so they really just did not really get any points. No one did bad. It's just that they didn't have any great running backs to help boost up their score a little bit. Granted, it was pretty much a one-sided matchup either way, so probably best for Hooked on a Thielen to take the L this week. But still, interesting matchup. They fall to 2-3. The Bryce is Right is up to 4-1. We got How I Met Calf Your Mother 1-4. They finally broke their winless streak, so they finally face off against one of the lower tier teams this week, and they destroyed them. 1-4, mixing it up, goes down 2, while How I Met Calf Your Mother goes up to 1-4. But they're 1-4, and they're in 6th place in points for, so that's kind of crazy. Just really bad matchups for them. And they have an impressive roster. Justin Jefferson, Dak Prescott doing really well. Jonathan Taylor was the biggest disappointment, but even then, mixing it up just did not have anything go for them this week. Pat Freiermuth, Deontay Johnson, and DJ Moore all doing very bad. And the only two people they had on bye were Elijah Moore and Buccaneers, so they really didn't even suffer from that. Well, How I Met Calf Your Mother have Rashad White, Geno Smith, and Chargers defense. So they actually had a little bit more struggle with a bye week, but they still destroyed. So good on How I Met Calf Your Mother, mixing it up. This is starting to get a little bad for you at this point. Going to this next matchup, Baskin Dobbins against Kittle Big Town. Again, more of a one-sided matchup going into it, but the Kittle Big Town actually kept this super close. Kittle Big Town had some bad buys here with Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and David Njoku all gone. But they had some people pick up the slack, and Alvin Kamara and Alan Lazard doing really, really well, keeping this to a 6-point game. And you got to give credit to Kittle Big Town. They fought hard, and honestly, they're raising their stock a little bit. Baskin Dobbins just has too good of a team, but no one really shined themselves. Just Aaron Rodgers, but everybody else kind of just got around 10 points and just did what they needed to do. So Baskin Dobbins still one of the big contenders in this league. Well, Kittle Big Town is showing some life in them. They're not showing that they're completely out yet. They've had some favorable matchups to keep them in this race, but they need to start winning a couple more games and actually having a more dominating persona to them. But this was a bad week for them, so hopefully it gets better going forward. A smile for the Kamara and Nakua Matata. Smile for the Kamara going into this was also a pretty big favorite. Nakua Matata has struggled in recent weeks, as you see from most of their players not doing too well here. They did not have any significant buys. Smile for the Kamara actually had 4 different buys, but still ended up destroying Nakua Matata. So this is a very favorable matchup this week for them to kind of get by, because they're 5th in points for. They're somewhere near the top with breakdown. They're 3-2. They're 148 points this week, and they have some damn good players. So Smile for the Kamara is looking really, really good. Well, Nakua Matata is kind of losing all steam and kind of getting down to that mixing it up area where mixing it up and Nakua Matata are kind of getting on that losing momentum phase. They need to start winning games here. Usually it takes about 9 wins in leagues like this, 9 to 10 wins to really stay in that kind of playoff range. Maybe sometimes 8, but 9 wins is usually where it goes, and that's 9-5, and they're 1 loss away from being in that area. So we'll see how it ends up for Nakua Matata, but it's unfortunately just how it goes sometimes. Finally, here are the current standings. Of course, Picket Line still has the advantage over Bryce is Right because we go by record first, then points for, then Kittle Big Town, then mixing it up. A smile for the Kamara, and Crispy Kareem, of course, 3-2, both right there with each other. Hooked on a Thielen, 1 win behind, but their points for is actually pretty favorable. And How I Met Calf Your Mother leading it down 1-4, but they're staying in the race. They're only two wins away from the top of the leaderboard here, so that's good for them. While at Safety Sally's, it's really just a race for Baskin Dobbins and Ominous at this point, but Baskin Dobbins does have a significant advantage with the points for and the record advantage. While Addison Square Garden and the Nakua Matata are just in struggle mode right now. This week in the Eliminator, of course, of the teams remaining, Ominous actually, weirdly enough, was the 8th place team. It's a bad week for them. They've been historically pretty good in coming weeks, but they just did not have a good week this week, making them the least scored team on this thing. And now I'm looking at this. We have some lower scoring teams here that are still in this race. Kittle Big Town, How I Met Calf Your Mother, and Addison Square Garden, all still in this despite their records being pretty bad, and Kittle Big Town not being the biggest scorer, but they've got themselves out of that range. Meanwhile, you still have 3 of the biggest stars here, the Bryce is Right, Picket Line, and Baskin Dobbins. And Smile for the Kamara is somewhere there in the middle. I'd say they're kind of the 4th team, kind of looking into power rankings type wise. So it's kind of interesting how the dynamic is shifted here, and more of these little middle league teams who aren't able to be explosive are actually falling off faster than some of the teams that maybe have a couple explosive of weeks. So interestingly enough, anyway, I'm going to go over to the Excel now and showcase all the different results. That way you can kind of get a good recap of everything, make sure I'm not cheating and all that good stuff. I mean, whatever, you gotta trust me, it's my series. Go fuck yourself. I don't know. Go fuck myself. I don't know. Here on screen now are going to be all the weeks, week by week. So the first one here in the middle of the screen are week 3. Kind of quickly kind of show you all the results of all of this stuff. I did make a slight mistake in week 5, which we'll get to here in a minute, that I fixed in between recording my last recording session and this recording session that I'll showcase. Here's week 4 and all the results here for you. I'm just making sure you're able to kind of see everything that kind of right gets cut off. There we go. Boom. Again, it's kind of just for your records and seeing what points kind of happened where. Make sure I'm actually doing my job. Here, look at this. We're going to do this on the fly. I didn't just notice. I like symmetry, you know. I like everything being all uniform. Like it all looking nice. With week 5, during the Bryce is Right and hooked on a Thielen game, I messed up the running back stuff. So actually, I did not line up a second running back. So I went back and fixed it so they had 5.2 points less. It didn't affect literally anything. I just had to update it, and technically they had slightly lower points, but it literally did not impact almost anything. So just for the record, just want to make sure I stated that. Also, I want to go for the record and say, during this whole thing with the quarterback position, since technically they go to a 100th. If you don't know what a 100th is, basically look at this decimal point. Oh my gosh, just messed that up. Look at the decimal point here. This 7 right here by Patrick Mahomes is a 10th. A second number right by it is a 100th. So that 0 would be the 100th. I don't go to the 100th in these things, and so I haven't been recording every single .04 for the quarterbacks. I've just been doing it intervals of 1. So every 25 yards, or if they're closer to the 25 yards. So if they get 13 yards closer to the 25-yard mark, that makes no sense. But you know, every 25 yards they get a point. If they are at 38 points, I give them the point, an extra point going to 50. So making it 2 points. It's a little confusing, but I just basically just count it in intervals of 25, with whichever way it goes closer is the one I go with. So it may have impacted a couple things this week with points for rankings and all that stuff, but just know I'm going by tenths. I feel like with fantasy, it's got to keep it like that. No matchup should have been affected, but points for could have been affected, and so take that as you will, because there was literally a 0.1 difference between some teams this week. So take it as you will. I made that call for myself mentally when I started tallying this up in the beginning from week 1. So I didn't make it known because I did say I was going to count all decimal points, but I made a call there to kind of every 25 yards, which I think is fair. I don't think it's a big deal. Beside the point, just want to make sure I made that known for you all. But thank you guys for watching again for the second episode for this fantasy series. This has taken a long time to really produce, a lot longer than I thought, so it's going to probably hopefully be kind of every week rather than every day or every other day or something like that, like I planned. But hope you guys enjoyed, and enjoy me on this journey. Hopefully we can make this more interactive in the future. I kind of wanted to see how this would do. It's doing all right, but we'll see how the following videos do. So thank you guys for watching. StraightA Dawson out.